Hi there, welcome to Tech Education. In this video, we'll talk about what is Azure Function, what are the different triggers we have it, and the relevant use cases for the same. We will discuss about the hosting plans. In the demo, we'll create a function app using Azure Portal. We'll discuss about the different hosting plan and the features of the hosting plans. Azure Functions. Azure Function is a service where we can execute a small piece of code in Azure without worrying about the underlying infrastructure. It can automatically scale based on the demand. How Azure Function works? Azure Function works based on the triggers. Trigger is nothing but a condition. When a particular condition is met, Azure Function will be executed. So if you see here, this is a timer trigger. Consider a use case where you wanted to send a password expiry notification. And this thing should happen every day night 12 o'clock. So you will create a timer trigger function, meaning the condition here is night 12 p.m. And action is this function will be executed. Probably it will just pull some data based on some business logic and then send a password reminder or expiry notification to the user. Next is blob trigger. So in this case, whenever you add a blob to the container, this function will be executed and it is pushing the data of the blob data into the SQL. When to use Azure Functions? Azure Functions are ideal for short-lived tasks. If the task is not taking more than 10 minutes, that will be the ideal case. Some of the use cases could be data transformations, lightweight APIs, webhook requests, etc. Bindings and triggers. Bindings are way to connect your Azure function to external services like databases, queues, or storage systems. Consider that your function is supposed to interact with external services, like you wanted to push some data to the Cosmos or you wanted to push some message to the queues. In that case, one way of doing it is you will download the Nugget packages, you will use the extension methods, connect it, and then push the messages to it. Second way is use bindings. So when you use bindings, you don't have to handle these connection issues. And these bindings you will mention when you're creating a function. In case if you don't understand much about bindings, don't worry about it. In the next video, we are going to create a function app and then deploy that particular function into the Azure Function app. There I'll be explaining you the bindings little more detail. Next, trigger. Trigger is based on the condition your function will be executed. It's an event. Once some event occurs, your function will be executed. Some of the key triggers are HTTP trigger. If you see this first one, wherever you have a web request, you can use this HTTP request. One of the use case could be your rate limiter. Consider that you have a web application which is interacting with the API, and API is in turn getting in touch with your Azure SQL and then getting data or saving data. You got a new requirement where they says like I wanted to have a rate limiter for the APIs. In that case, what you can do is you can create a Azure function which will have that rate limiter functionality. So whenever the request reaches the API will make a function request and then it will get the required data from the rate limiter, and then based on the data it will either process the request or it will send the relevant message to the user. In that case, you can use HTTP trigger. Second is timer trigger. With this we already discussed it. Password notification will be one of the basic examples for timer trigger. You can do like a lot of other stuff. Next is blob storage trigger. Whenever you add any blob to the container, you wanted some action to be done. Example is like image processing. Consider that you are uploading an image to the container. Requirement could be like you wanted to reduce the size of the image, or you wanted to create multiple file extensions of that image. Could be your JPG, PNG, BMP, etc. So that image processing you can do it in the using blob storage trigger. Next is Cosmos DB trigger. So whenever any data is inserted, updated, or deleted, if you are expecting some action to be done, then you can use Cosmos DB trigger over there. One of the example is like real-time analytics. You wanted to monitor the sales data in the dashboard and it should be almost near to the real time. So what you can do is when the data is pushed into the Cosmos DB, you can invoke the function and then update the dashboard. Next is queue trigger. This queue trigger, whenever you send any message to the queue, this trigger will be fired. Example use case could be logging and monitoring purpose. You can use it. And other triggers are like service bus triggers, event grid triggers, etc. We can use it depending on the use case. There are multiple hosting plans. The first one will be the consumption. As the name implies, depending on the consumption, you will be charged. For example, you have a function which you have deployed it and it's running only 1 hour per day. That means you will be charged only for 1 hour, not for the entire day. That is what is the consumption plan. Second one is the flex consumption. This is little better than the consumption. Charges will be as per that. Based on the consumption only, you will be charged. But another benefit here is this you will have like high scalability and better performance. And in this particular plan, you have a provision of selecting the RAM for each app, for each function app instance. It could be 2 GB or 4 GB. So that flexibility you will have it in the flex consumption plan. Third one is the premium plan. Generally, this premium plan will be used for production environments. In this, you will have a provision to select more configurations, like you can select more ACUs, or it could be RAMs, it could be vcodes, etc. When I say ACU, it's nothing but Azure Compute Unit that defines the power of your virtual machine. The higher the ACU, the higher the performance. Next is app service. If you already have an app service plan, you can host this function app in that app service plan. Whatever the configuration app service plan has it, it will be used by the function app. The way the regular app service plan works, in the same way, this app service will be used. Next is app service. If you have any if you have any app service plan, you will be able to host that function in the app service plan. In case if you want more information on app services, we created videos. I'll provide the link of those videos in the description. Please watch it for more information. And finally, container apps environment. If you have any containers in your application, and for containers, you need this container app environment. There also, you will be able to host your function app. And you can write these functions in multiple languages like .NET Core, PHP, Java, Node, Python. In short, you don't have to learn any new language to use these functions in Azure. Now let's get into the demo. To create a function, function app is mandatory. Function app is a collection of functions and you need to have a storage account also. So these are the two mandatory things to create a function. Let's understand the features of the hosting plans. Scale to zero, meaning you can have zero instances. This feature is available in consumption and flex consumption, even in container apps environment. It's not available for premium and app services. Next is scale behavior. So based on what the functions will be scaled out, based on the events. If you're getting more events and the function is executing more times, the scale out will happen automatically. If you see here for app service, it's metrics based because in app service, multiple apps will be there. So depending on the CPU, memory, based on those metrics, it will be scaled out. Virtual networking. If you want additional security, then you can use virtual networking. For example, if you have a virtual network where a lot of services are there and you wanted to, if you want to communicate function app with those services, then you need to configure virtual network for the function. And it's not available in consumption, it's available for all the other plans. Next is dedicated compute and prevent cold start. Dedicated compute means you can have a configuration. In the flex consumption, you can configure the RAM. In functions premium, you can configure the V codes, RAM, etc. In app service also you can do it. Cold start. Cold start means consider that if your function is inactive for a longer period of time and after that you got an request, the first request will be little slow. To avoid that, you use cold start. So cold start is not available for consumption. It's available for all of the other hosting plans. Finally, maximum scale out. How many instances it can scale out? Max. So consumption is 200, flex consumption is 1000, which is very huge when comparing with consumption. Premium is 100, app service is in between 40 to 60 range, container apps is 300. So let's create the consumption plan first. So select the subscription and the resource group. And I'll select YouTube as my resource group, function name. Okay. Runtime stack, I would like to select .NET, and version region, I would like to leave it as it is. Operating system is also Windows. Next is the storage. So I would like to select the existing storage. If you don't have it, you can create it. Public access, okay. App insights, no. Continuous deployment disabled. Basic authentication, I would like to enable it. So this is for review purpose. This is a subscription which I have selected it. Resource group YouTube. This is the name of the function. And this is the name of the storage, tech edu storage. And it's a consumption plan. Then let's create this. Okay, it got created. In the overview blade, we can see the details under which resource group, what is the status of it, and what is the URL of this function. We can all see all these details. If you want to restart it or stop it, you will be able to do it from here. And whatever the functions you have it in this function app, it will be available here. Since it's a newly created, we don't have any other functions. Now let's look at the other hosting plan options. Since now it's we already created it, we are able to see it over here. Let's create another one. So flex consumption, of course, that is in the preview mode. So I'll just select the resource group. So this is fine region, runtime.net. This is what I was talking about. This is the place where you will be able to select the RAM. This RAM, for example, if I say 2048 MB, it's nothing but 2 GB of RAM. For each instance, it will allocate 2 GB of RAM. That is what it means. It's an instance size. The amount of memory allocated to each instance of the function app. This is the difference between consumption and the flex consumption. Since I already created a function app, I'm not going to create this. Let's select the next hosting plan, premium. Resource. Language.net. So here you have better configuration. So there it was only RAM selection. Here you can select the ACUs, memory, vCPU. Suppose if your function, if you are expecting that it will have a huge load, you can select the higher end configuration as well. This is the difference between flex consumption and the premium. In premium, you will get a option to select based on ACU, V codes, and the GB. Now let's select the other function hosting plan. app service. So if you have any pricing plan, you can select the existing thing. Since I don't have it, it's showing me the options. I can select the pricing plan or the features, whatever I'm expecting it. I'll be able to select it over here. And finally, container apps environment. If you have anything existing, you can select it here, or if you want, you can just create it new. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching.